Nexus Prime glittered with impossible light. The Galactic Council chamber, with its towering marble columns that seemed to reach beyond the physical constraints of the room, created an illusion of infinite space. Selene Ikari's footsteps echoed across the mirrored floor that reflected not just her image, but the essence of all who walked upon it. Above, the ceiling was a masterpiece, 10,000 starfields painted with such precision that observers often lost themselves gazing upward, feeling as though they might fall into the cosmos itself. Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council for 5 years now, Selene had grown accustomed to the chamber's intimidating grandeur. Today, however, the magnificence felt hollow. Her dark eyes scanned the curved tiers where representatives of 902 species sat in judgment. 5 years of careful diplomacy, of building bridges and smoothing misunderstandings. Yet the whispers followed her still. Humans. Innovative but chaotic. Brilliant but dangerous. Unpredictable. She straightened her midnight blue diplomatic uniform, the silver Earth emblem catching the light. At 43, Selene carried herself with the poise expected of humanity's voice in galactic affairs. But the weight of responsibility had etched fine lines around her eyes. Her black hair, streaked with premature silver, was pulled back in a severe knot at the nape of her neck. "The Council recognizes Ambassador Ikari of Terra," announced an aide, voice amplified to reach the farthest corners of the chamber. Selene nodded and took her place at the central podium. From her elevated position, she could see every face, or what passed for faces among the diverse species gathered. The Mantideans with their compound eyes, the crystalline Phorians who communicated through light patterns, the gaseous Vrel contained in their environment suits, all watching, all waiting. Speaker Vorath rose from his seat at the apex of the chamber. A Thraxian, his bluish-gray skin stretched taut over an elongated skull, eyes deep-set and calculating. For 3 centuries, Vorath had served on the council, working his way up through the ranks with methodical precision until reaching the highest position. His voice, when it came, was surprisingly melodious for such an austere figure. "Ambassador Ikari, you have been summoned to hear the Council's decision regarding the charges brought against humanity." Selene inclined her head respectfully. "The Council honors us with its attention." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Everyone knew what was coming. It had been debated for months. The unauthorized terraforming of the Procyon sector, allegations of trade violations, accusations of technological tampering with Council systems. Selene had countered each charge with evidence, with reasoned argument, with diplomatic finesse. But politics, she had learned long ago, rarely yielded to reason alone. Vorath unfurled a glowing scroll, an ancient tradition maintained despite the availability of more efficient technologies. The Council prized its rituals, its permanence. That had always been the fundamental disconnect between the Alliance and humanity. Humans embrace change. The Council enshrines stability. "The vote stands at 900-2, Vorath announced, his voice echoing. "The Council finds humanity in violation of Galactic Accord statutes regarding planetary modification and interspecies trade protocols. The sentence is..." He paused, savoring the moment of power. "Expulsion from the Galactic Alliance. All human settlements on non-Earth territories are to be evacuated within 1 standard cycle. All human ships are to withdraw from Alliance space. All trade agreements are hereby nullified." Selene's face remained impassive, but her heart thundered in her chest. 900-2. She had expected a majority against them, but this was near unanimity. Only the Keplerian representatives had voted in their favor, likely out of gratitude for the agricultural innovations that had saved their species from starvation a decade earlier. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of sounds, clicks, whistles, rumbles that translated roughly to applause in various cultures. They were celebrating humanity's downfall, celebrating the removal of the unpredictable element from their ordered society. With deliberate movements that betrayed none of her inner turmoil, Celine activated her datapad. A single command, encoded and encrypted. Protocol Exodus initiated. She looked up, meeting Vorath's triumphant gaze. "The Council has spoken," she said, her voice carrying across the suddenly hushed chamber. "Humanity acknowledges your decision." She turned and walked toward the exit, back straight, head high. Behind her, alien cheers echoed off marble and mirrors, following her like shadows. Too late, she thought, far too late. On New Gaia, Governor Samir Rojas stood on the observation deck of Administration Tower, watching the evacuation unfold across the planet's golden plains. Massive harvesters moved through fields of grain that stretched to the horizon, working at triple capacity to salvage what could be saved. In the distance, transport ships descended through the atmosphere like falling stars, their hulls painted with Earth's colors. "Governor, we've loaded 60% of the eastern silos," reported his assistant, a young woman whose face showed the strain of 3 days without sleep. "But the calculation remains the same. We don't have enough cargo capacity for the full harvest." Samir nodded, his weathered face grim beneath salt and pepper hair. New Gaia was humanity's breadbasket, terraformed from a barren rock into a world of endless wheat fields and fruit orchards. For 15 years, he had governed this world, watching it transform from a frontier outpost to a thriving colony of 3 million souls. "Prioritize the heritage seeds and embryonic livestock," he said. "They're irreplaceable. Standard crops can be regrown." Beyond the glass, the native Keplerians moved through the fields alongside human workers, six-limbed and covered in iridescent scales. They had been skeptical when humans first arrived. Now, many had integrated fully into colonial life, learning agricultural techniques and sharing their knowledge of the planet's unique ecosystem. A Keplerian elder named Thalo approached, bowing in the formal manner of his people. "Governor Rojas, my community wishes to speak with you." Samir followed the elder to a gathering of Keplerians at the tower's base. Nearly 100 had assembled, their scales shimmering in New Gaia's golden sunlight. "We have decided," Thalo announced, "that many of us will remain behind when you depart." Samir frowned. "The Council's decree applies to human settlements, not to you. You're native to this sector." "Yet we have learned your ways of growing food," said Thalo. "We wish to continue this work." A younger Keplerian stepped forward, holding a datapad. "We request knowledge before metal, seeds before ships." Understanding dawned on Samir. "You want our agricultural database and seed stock." "Your people must take what they need," Thalo acknowledged. "But what you cannot carry, we would preserve." Emotion tightened Samir's throat. 5 days ago, he had received the evacuation order from Earth Command, blunt and non-negotiable. Protocol Exodus had been triggered. All humans were to withdraw from Alliance space immediately. The why hardly mattered anymore. "The seed vaults on the southern continent," he said finally. "They contain samples of every crop variety we've developed here. The environmental controls are designed to last a century without maintenance." He paused. "They're yours now." Thalo placed 3 hands on his chest in a gesture of profound gratitude. "We will remember how to make the land yield life, and we will remember those who taught us." As the Keplerians departed, Samir's assistant approached again. "Governor, Admiral Takahashi's fleet has arrived in orbit. He's requesting your presence on the command ship." Samir cast one last look at the golden fields stretching to the horizon. 15 years of work, a lifetime of achievement, about to be abandoned. "Tell the Admiral I'll be up shortly," he said. "I have one last duty to perform." Admiral Hana Takahashi stood on the bridge of the UHS Liberty, Earth's flagship and the pride of the human fleet. Through the viewport, the curve of New Gaia glowed like a jewel against the darkness of space. Dozens of civilian ships moved in an orderly dance around the Liberty, following paths plotted by the ship's navigation system. "Status report," she demanded, her voice carrying the authority of 30 years in Earth Space Command. Her first officer, Commander Jackson Okafor, stepped forward, tall and imposing, with features that spoke of his Nigerian ancestry. He had served under Takahashi for 7 years. "The first convoy is ready to depart. Admiral, 23 ships, mostly carrying colonists and essential personnel. Second convoy is still loading agricultural supplies and will be ready in approximately 6 hours." Takahashi nodded, her lined face betraying nothing of the turmoil within. Protocol Exodus had been Earth's contingency plan for decades, the response to a worst-case scenario where humanity found itself expelled from the Alliance. Now that it had happened, the precise, methodical evacuation was unfolding exactly as planned. Yet the reality felt surreal. "And the hyperspace routes?" she asked. "Plotted and triple-checked," Okafor confirmed. "We're avoiding all standard Alliance lanes. The convoys will travel through the dead zone to reach the rally points." The dead zone, an expanse of space where hyperspace navigation was notoriously difficult due to gravitational anomalies. Alliance ships avoided it. Human navigators had been secretly mapping safe passages through it for years, preparing for this very contingency. "Governor Rojas has arrived, Admiral," announced a communications officer. Takahashi straightened her uniform. "Send him in." Samir Rojas entered the bridge, looking exhausted but composed. He offered a formal salute, which Takahashi returned. "Welcome aboard the Liberty, Governor," she said. "I regret the circumstances." "As do we all," Rojas replied. "My world is nearly evacuated. The Keplerians have agreed to maintain what we leave behind." Takahashi raised an eyebrow. "That's unexpected and generous. They consider it an exchange. We've given them the means to feed themselves better than ever before." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Not all species share the Council's fear of us." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden alarm. Red lights flashed across the bridge as officers scrambled to their stations. "Report!" barked Takahashi. "Hyperspace disturbance." "Admiral," called the science officer. "Massive energy readings at the edge of the system." The main screen shifted to show a swirling vortex of energy forming near New Gaia's outermost moon. Lightning-like discharges lashed out from the anomaly, growing in intensity. "It's a storm, Admiral," the science officer continued. "Class 4 hyperspace disruption." Takahashi swore under her breath. Hyperspace storms were rare but devastating phenomena, tears in the fabric of spacetime that could disable ships or pull them off course. The timing couldn't have been worse. "Recall all shuttles," she ordered. "Get everyone aboard whatever ship they're nearest to. We need to clear the system before that storm expands." Okafor was already at the communications array, sending emergency signals to all vessels, recalculating departure vectors to avoid the disruption zone. "Will we be able to outrun it?" Rojas asked quietly. Takahashi met his gaze directly. "We don't have a choice." Within minutes, the Liberty shuddered as its engines powered up to maximum. Throughout the ship, refugees from New Gaia huddled in cargo bays and corridors, far beyond the vessel's intended capacity. Similar scenes played out across the evacuation fleet as the carefully organized departure dissolved into controlled chaos. "First convoy entering hyperspace now," reported Okafor. On the view screen, ships disappeared one by one into the blue-white flashes of hyperspace jumps. The Liberty held position, covering their retreat. "Storm intensity increasing," warned the science officer. "Edge effects reaching our position in 3 minutes." "All remaining ships, jump immediately," Takahashi commanded. "Liberty will follow once the convoy is clear." The bridge crew worked with the precision of long training, but tension filled the air. The storm's energy tendrils reached toward them like hungry fingers, distorting sensor readings and causing minor systems to flicker. "Final civilian vessels away, Admiral," Okafor reported. "We're the last." Take us out, Commander. Jump when ready. The Liberty's engines rose to a high-pitched whine as the massive vessel oriented itself toward its hyperspace vector. On the screen, the storm had grown to fill nearly a quarter of the display, its chaotic energies threatening to engulf them. Jump in 5, 4. Okafor's count was interrupted as the ship lurched violently. "We're caught in the edge field," shouted the science officer. "Drive stability compromised." Emergency lights activated as the main power fluctuated. Throughout the Liberty, passengers grabbed for handholds as gravity briefly faltered. "Reroute emergency power to the drive stabilizers," Takahashi ordered, her voice cutting through the chaos. "All non-essential systems to minimum." For a terrible moment, the bridge was bathed in red emergency lighting as life support systems prioritized minimal function. The air grew noticeably cooler as environmental controls reduced to emergency levels. Then, the ship gave a final shudder, and the stars outside streaked into lines as the Liberty tore free of the storm's influence and leaped into hyperspace. Takahashi gripped the command rail, her knuckles white. They had escaped, barely. But they were on their way to the rally point, where the rest of humanity would gather beyond Alliance reach. "Damage report," she demanded once the ship stabilized. "Minor systems failures throughout the ship," Okafor reported. "Life support at 80% but holding. Hull integrity maintained." He paused. "We lost contact with 2 civilian vessels during the jump. Admiral, the Ganymede and the Frontier Spirit." Takahashi closed her eyes briefly. 2 ships, perhaps 1,000 lives. "Continue scanning for their signals," she said. "They may have been pulled off course rather than destroyed." "Yes, Admiral." Rojas stepped closer to Takahashi, speaking softly, so only she could hear. "This is just the beginning, isn't it? New Gaia is only one colony." She nodded grimly. 17 major colonies, 42 research outposts, 38 mining operations. Over 60 million humans living outside Earth's solar system. Her eyes met his. All coming home. Or at least, all trying to. Back on Nexus Prime, Celine Ikari sat alone in the Earth Embassy. Most of her staff had already departed, taking the embassy's critical databases and encryption codes with them. Only basic systems remained active, enough to maintain the pretense of diplomatic presence while the evacuation proceeded across human space. Her private office, usually pristine, was now cluttered with discarded datapads and half-empty cups of cold tea. For 3 days, she had worked without rest, coordinating with Earth Command and fielding desperate messages from human enclaves throughout Alliance territory. The terminal before her displayed the final piece of her mission. A comprehensive data package detailing decades of secret human technological and humanitarian contributions to the Alliance. Atmospheric processors that kept toxic worlds habitable. Medical treatments quietly distributed during epidemics. Navigation algorithms that prevented thousands of hyperspace accidents annually. All created by humans. All integrated so seamlessly into Alliance infrastructure that few realized their origin. All now documented in excruciating detail, with timestamps and verification codes. Celine hesitated, her finger hovering over the transmission key. Part of her, the diplomat, the peacemaker, wanted to make one final plea, to beg the Council to reconsider, to warn them of the consequences their decision would bring. But another part, the strategist, the survivor, knew it would be futile. The Council had made its choice, 900-2, near unanimity. She pressed the key. The file package transmitted directly to Speaker Vorath's office, bypassing normal diplomatic channels. A message he would likely not see until it was too late. A soft chime indicated an incoming communication. Earth Command, requesting an update. Celine activated the secure channel. "Ambassador," said the face that appeared on the screen. "General Eliana Santos, Coordinator of Protocol Exodus. Your status." "Final documentation transmitted," Celine reported. Embassy systems set to wipe in 6 hours. I'll be on the last diplomatic shuttle. Santos nodded, her expression grim. Good. The evacuation is proceeding, though not without complications. We lost 2 ships near New Gaia due to a hyperspace storm. Celine closed her eyes briefly. Casualties? Unknown. We're still searching. Santos leaned closer to the screen. What's the mood on Nexus Prime? Celebratory, Celine said bitterly. The council chambers erupted in cheers when the expulsion was announced. And afterward? Any indication they understand what they've done? Celine shook her head. Nothing. It's as if they believe the galaxy will continue exactly as before, merely without the human irritant. Santos's face hardened. They'll learn differently soon enough, she paused. The council has requested your presence for a formal closing ceremony tomorrow. Command leaves it to your discretion whether to attend. The question hung between them: a final chance to plead humanity's case, or a humiliating ritual to be avoided. I'll be there, Celine decided. Not to beg, but to ensure they remember our dignity when everything falls apart. Santos nodded. Safe journey home, Ambassador. After the communication ended, Celine stood at the window overlooking the glittering spires of Nexus Prime. For 5 years, she had walked its streets, admired its architecture, respected its laws. She had believed in the possibility of true cooperation between species so different, yet equally worthy of respect. Now that dream lay in ruins, and soon, perhaps much more would follow. Speaker Vorath reclined in his private chamber, savoring a rare moment of tranquility. The expulsion vote had gone even better than anticipated, a near-unanimous rejection of the human presence that had increasingly disturbed the careful balance of the alliance. His meditation was interrupted by a soft tone from his communications console. With a gesture of irritation, he activated it. Speaker. Apologies for the interruption, said his aide, a young Thraxian female named Merix. We're receiving reports of system glitches in the central distribution network. Vorath waved dismissively. Technical malfunctions are beneath my concern. Contact the Engineering Guild. Yes, Speaker, but... Merix hesitated. The Engineering Guild reports that the issues began precisely when the human evacuation ships departed Nexus Prime. A flicker of unease passed through Vorath, quickly suppressed. Coincidence, or perhaps a petty act of sabotage as they left. Nothing more. As you say, Speaker. Merix didn't sound convinced, but knew better than to contradict him directly. There's also a data package that arrived from the Earth Embassy, marked for your personal attention. File it with the diplomatic archives, Vorath said. I have no interest in human complaints or protests. At once, Speaker. As the communication ended, Vorath tried to recapture his earlier sense of satisfaction. Humans had always been an anomaly in the Alliance, advancing too quickly, changing too readily, questioning too persistently. Their removal would restore the proper order of things. Any temporary disruptions were a small price to pay for long-term stability. Administrator Vela of Zapiria stood in the central control room of her world's primary food distribution center. Anxiety, evident in the rapid color changes, rippling across her translucent skin. Around her, technicians worked feverishly at consoles, trying to restore functionality to systems that had inexplicably failed 3 days earlier. Nothing is working, reported her chief engineer, a Zaparian male whose natural luminescence had dimmed with exhaustion. The automated sorting protocols are completely unresponsive. Manual overrides are being rejected. Vela's colors darkened with worry. Zapiria, a desert world with limited arable land, depended entirely on precisely scheduled food imports and distribution. The system's failure meant millions would soon go hungry. What about the backup systems? She demanded. They activated as designed, the engineer explained. But they're running on the same protocols. And those protocols are... He hesitated. Are what? Corrupted. Administrator. Or, perhaps more accurately, they're executing exactly as programmed. But the programming itself has changed. It's as if someone rewrote the core instructions without altering any security flags. Vela felt a chill. The humans! The engineer's skin flashed a pattern, indicating uncertainty. I can't say for certain, but the system architecture was designed by a human tech firm 2 decades ago. They've maintained it remotely ever since. And now they're gone, Vela murmured. She had abstained from the expulsion vote, one of the few council members unwilling to support such a drastic measure. Her caution, it seemed, had been justified. Administrator, called a communications officer. We're receiving similar reports from 12 other systems: food distribution, medical supply chains, even planetary defense networks, all experiencing critical failures. Vela's colors paled to near transparency. Contact the council immediately. This is no longer a local matter. On a remote mining station orbiting a nameless gas giant at the edge of Alliance space, Chief Engineer Tarok stared at the frozen controls of the atmospheric processing plant. For 3 generations, the station had extracted valuable noble gases from the planet below, fueling a significant portion of the Alliance economy. Now it stood idle, its automated systems locked in an endless diagnostic loop. Try bypassing the main sequencer, he ordered his team. Manual control if necessary. A younger engineer looked up from her console, mandibles clicking with distress. Chief, I've identified the problem. The core programming. It's been subtly altered. Almost imperceptible changes to thousands of routines. Can you restore it? I wouldn't even know where to begin. These changes are woven throughout the entire system architecture. It would take years to untangle. Tarok's exoskeleton rattled, his species equivalent of a defeated sigh. Who could have done this? When? The engineer's compound eyes shifted nervously. The base code was written by Horizon Technologies, a human corporation. Understanding dawned on Tarok with terrible clarity. They built backdoors into everything they designed, and now that we've expelled them. He didn't need to finish the thought. Throughout Alliance space, similar scenes were unfolding as the hidden dependencies on human technology revealed themselves one by one. Captain Nira Roth stood on the bridge of the Alliance vessel, Deep Seeker, the most advanced scout ship in the fleet. Slender and silver-skinned, with eyes adapted for the dim light of her homeworld. She projected an aura of calm authority that belied her inner tension. Status report, she requested. Her navigation officer, a burly Centaurian, looked up from his instruments. We've reached the edge of the dark zone, Captain. No sign of human vessels on conventional scanners. Roth nodded. The mission parameters from the Council had been clear. If unprecedented, find the retreating humans and establish communication. After 2 weeks of escalating system failures throughout Alliance space, the Council's initial triumph had turned to barely concealed panic. Prepare to enter the dark zone, she ordered. Shields at maximum. Sensors on full spectrum. Her crew exchanged uneasy glances. The dark zone had earned its name, a region of space where navigation was treacherous and communication unreliable. Few Alliance ships ventured into its depths. Captain, the communications officer said hesitantly, we're receiving a transmission. Origin unknown. Roth frowned. Out here? Put it through. The main view screen flickered, showing only static at first, then resolving into a human face, a woman with dark skin and close-cropped silver hair. Her expression was neutral, revealing nothing. Alliance vessel, the woman said. You are approaching restricted space. Identify yourself and state your purpose. Roth stepped forward. This is Captain Nira Roth of the Alliance ship Deep Seeker. We come under diplomatic authority seeking dialogue with human leadership. The woman's expression didn't change. After expelling us from your territory, you now pursue us into ours? Interesting interpretation of diplomacy. Captain, the Council recognizes that errors may have been made, Roth said carefully. We seek to open discussions regarding the cascading failures of your technology, the woman interrupted. The collapse of your distribution networks, the sudden vulnerability of your defense systems. Roth hesitated. The mission briefing had stressed diplomacy, conciliation, but this human seemed to already know exactly why they had come. Yes, she admitted finally. The Council wishes to discuss these matters with appropriate human authorities. The woman was silent for a long moment, studying Roth with unnerving intensity. Finally, she nodded. Transmitting coordinates. You may proceed to the designated location, alone. Any additional Alliance vessels will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly. The transmission ended abruptly. Coordinates received, Captain, reported the navigation officer. They lead deeper into the dark zone. Roth considered her options. The mission was vital. The Council had made that abundantly clear. But following unknown coordinates into a notorious navigational hazard, at the direction of those who might well bear significant grudges against the Alliance. Set course for the coordinates, she decided, and prepare a complete mission log to be transmitted back to Nexus Prime at regular intervals. As the Deep Seeker altered course, penetrating further into the darkness, Roth couldn't shake the feeling that she was headed not toward a diplomatic negotiation, but toward a fundamental shift in the galaxy's balance of power. 2 weeks into the journey, the Deep Seeker emerged from a particularly dense region of the Dark Zone into a vast, empty expanse. According to all charts, nothing should exist here, just empty space, far from any star system or navigational route. What they found instead defied comprehension. Captain, whispered the science officer, sensors are detecting structures. Roth stared at the view screen in disbelief. Stretching before them was what could only be described as a city in space, enormous curved structures that seemed to bend reality around them, connected by glowing energy conduits that pulsed with otherworldly light. The scale was impossible. Each structure would dwarf the largest space station in Alliance territory. Life signs, she managed to ask. Billions, Captain, and energy readings beyond anything in our database. As the Deep Seeker approached, smaller vessels appeared, escorting them toward what appeared to be a docking structure. Unlike any human ships Roth had seen before, these craft seemed almost alive, their hulls shifting and flowing like liquid metal. We're receiving a transmission, announced the communications officer. The view screen activated, showing the same woman as before. This time, she was not alone. Beside her stood a tall, distinguished human with features that suggested South Asian ancestry. Captain Roth, the woman said, I am Admiral Leona Walsh, formerly of Earth Fleet Command. Allow me to introduce Dr. Amina Brooks, Director of the Architect Interface Program. Roth inclined her head respectfully. Thank you for receiving us. You've come a long way, said Dr. Brooks, her voice gentle, but with an undercurrent of steel. I'm curious what the Council believes this meeting will accomplish. Roth had rehearsed her response during the long journey, crafting diplomatic language that would convey urgency without revealing weakness. Now, faced with the reality of what humanity had achieved in such a short time, those carefully prepared words seemed hollow. The Alliance is experiencing difficulties, she said finally. Systems are failing. Networks collapsing. The Council believes human expertise might help address these issues. Walsh's expression remained impassive. And in exchange, the Council is prepared to discuss revised terms for human presence within Alliance space. A faint smile touched Brooks's lips. You misunderstand, Captain. We're not interested in returning to Alliance space. We've found something far more significant out here in the darkness. The view screen split, showing the impossible structures surrounding the Deep Seeker. What you're seeing is just the beginning, Brooks continued. The architects have been waiting for a species like ours, adaptable, innovative, willing to embrace change rather than fear it. The architects, Roth echoed, confusion evident in her voice. We are not alone in this universe, Captain, Brooks said simply. The Alliance represents a tiny fraction of what exists. The architects have been watching for millennia, seeking partners worthy of joining them in tending the cosmic garden. Walsh leaned forward. Your council feared our chaos, our unpredictability. They never understood that these qualities were precisely what made us valuable. Roth struggled to process what she was hearing. These structures, you built them. Not exactly, Brooks said. We're learning to work with materials and energies beyond conventional physics. The architects show us the way. We provide the creative implementation. A new voice broke into the conversation. Roth's communications officer, face pale with shock. Captain, we're receiving an emergency transmission from Nexus Prime. Administrator Vela of Zapiria is requesting to speak with you immediately. Roth hesitated, looking to Walsh and Brooks. The Admiral nodded once, and the screen split again to show Vela. The Zapirian administrator's skin was cycling through distress colors rapidly. Captain Roth, she began without preamble. The situation has deteriorated beyond our worst projections. 36 worlds are reporting critical food shortages. The automated defense platforms around Nexus Prime have activated their security protocols and are preventing ships from approaching or leaving. The council chamber itself is under lockdown, with Speaker Vorath and 200 representatives trapped inside. Vela's colors darkened further. Have you made contact with the humans? Have they agreed to help? Before Roth could respond, Walsh spoke. Administrator Vela, we hear your distress. Vela's colors flashed with surprise. Admiral Walsh, then you are aware of our situation. We are aware of the consequences of the Council's decision, Walsh replied evenly. As we warned would happen. Please, Vela said, her usual diplomatic reserve crumbling. People are suffering, dying. Whatever grievances exist between us, surely innocent lives must take precedence. A curious argument, Brooks interjected. From a government that was willing to displace 60 million human innocents for political expediency. Vela's colors pulsed with shame. I did not vote for expulsion, but I accept my share of responsibility for not opposing it more forcefully. She paused. What would you have us do? What terms do you require for your assistance? Walsh and Brooks exchanged a look that Roth couldn't interpret. Finally, Walsh turned back to the screen. There are no terms. Administrator, she said quietly. No conditions we would accept. No concessions that would bring us back. Then you condemn us to collapse, Vela whispered, to suffering on a scale not seen in millennia. No, Brooks corrected gently. Your own fear of change condemned you. Your rejection of the unfamiliar. Your insistence on stasis in a universe that demands evolution. Walsh's expression softened slightly. We didn't sabotage your systems, Administrator. We simply built them to require our continued innovation. For decades, human technicians and engineers quietly updated your networks, improved your algorithms, patched your vulnerabilities, not as an act of malice, but because that's how we think, constantly improving, adapting, evolving. When you removed us, Brooks added, you removed that evolutionary pressure. Now your systems are frozen in time, unable to adapt to changing conditions. Vela's colors had faded to pale despair. And you will not help us learn to adapt ourselves? We cannot, Brooks said, with what seemed like genuine regret. The path we've chosen with the architects takes us beyond the physical limitations your society accepts. We're becoming something your people have explicitly rejected. A synthesis of biological and technological evolution that embraces uncertainty rather than fearing it. Walsh leaned forward. Tell the Council this. Humanity wishes you no harm. We'll not interfere with your worlds. But neither will we return to being what we were. The stars call us forward, not backward. Vela's image flickered as the transmission degraded. "Then we truly are alone," she said, her voice fading. As the connection failed entirely, Roth found herself standing in stunned silence, trying to comprehend the magnitude of what she had witnessed. The Alliance, the central political reality of her existence, was collapsing. And humanity had found something so far beyond their understanding that they had chosen to abandon everything rather than remain within the confines of known space. "What happens now?" she asked finally. Brooks smiled, a genuine expression of warmth that surprised Roth. "Now, Captain, you have a choice. Return to Nexus Prime with our message, or stay and witness the beginning of something unprecedented." Roth looked at the view screen, where the impossible structures of the human architect collaboration stretched beyond comprehension. Then she thought of her duty, her oath to the Alliance. "I must return," she said quietly, "to report what I've seen." Walsh nodded, unsurprised. "Safe journey, Captain Roth. I suspect we will not meet again." 5 years passed. The once Grand Council chamber on Nexus Prime stood empty, dust gathering on the marble columns and mirrored floor. The painted starfield ceiling had dulled, sections flaking away to reveal the ordinary materials beneath the illusion of infinite cosmos. Speaker Vorath, now visibly aged, sat alone at his elevated position. Before him, holographic reports scrolled endlessly, accounts of collapsed economies, abandoned worlds, species returning to their homeworlds as the complex web of interstellar trade and support dissolved. The expulsion of humanity had been meant to restore order, to eliminate the unpredictable element that disturbed the careful balance of the Alliance. Instead, it had revealed how dependent that balance had become on constant human innovation. Food distribution systems failed first, leading to riots and evacuations on dozens of worlds. Hyperspace navigation networks degraded next, making travel between systems increasingly hazardous. Defense platforms, medical technology, environmental controls, one by one. The systems that had maintained the Alliance's prosperity for centuries began to falter without the constant, invisible updates that humans had provided. The mighty Galactic Council, once comprising representatives from 902 species, had dwindled to barely 200. Many had simply departed, returning to their homeworlds to weather the collapse in isolation. Others had been unable to reach Nexus Prime, as transportation systems failed. A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission, a rare occurrence these days, as interstellar communication grew increasingly unreliable. Vorath activated the receiver. Speaker Vorath," came a familiar voice. Administrator Vela, one of the few who had remained at their posts through the collapse. "We've lost contact with the Andromeda sector. All 47 worlds. Silent." Vorath closed his eyes briefly. "Understood, Administrator. Add it to the record." "There's more," Vela continued. "Before communication failed, they reported sightings of unusual vessels at the sector's edge. Ships unlike any in our registry. Living metal. They said..." A chill ran through Vorath's aged frame. "Humans!" "Unknown. The descriptions match Captain Roth's report from 5 years ago, but verification is impossible now." After Roth had returned from her mission to the Dark Zone, her account had been met with disbelief and dismissal. Architects? Cosmic evolution? Many on the Council had declared it human propaganda, a ploy to force the Alliance to beg for their return. Now, with the Alliance in ruins, such dismissals rang hollow. "Thank you, Administrator," Vorath said. "Continue monitoring as best you can." After the transmission ended, Vorath rose from his seat with effort. His once precise movements had grown halting with age and stress. He crossed to a small terminal set discreetly into the chamber wall, a private access point he rarely used. With trembling fingers, he accessed the diplomatic archives, searching for a file he had dismissed years earlier. A data package from Ambassador Ikari, delivered on the day of humanity's expulsion. The file opened, revealing thousands of detailed records, evidence of human contributions to Alliance infrastructure spanning decades. Atmospheric processors, medical treatments, navigation algorithms, all quietly integrated, all essential to the functioning of a civilization that had taken them for granted. At the end of the file was a personal message from Ikari. "You watched us leave. Too late to fix it now." Vorath stared at the words, feeling their truth settle into his bones. Too late indeed. A sudden tremor shook the chamber, sending dust cascading from the ceiling. The tremor grew stronger, rattling the ancient marble columns. Vorath steadied himself against the wall, confusion giving way to alarm as the vibrations intensified. The mirrored floor cracked, lines of light spreading like a spiderweb beneath his feet. The chamber's walls began to shimmer and distort, as if reality itself was being rewritten. With a sound like shattering glass, the very fabric of the chamber split open. Through the breach glided what could only be described as living ships, vessels of impossible design, their surfaces flowing like quicksilver, pulsing with internal light. Vorath stood frozen, unable to flee or even speak as one ship larger than the others moved to hover before him. Its surface rippled, and a figure emerged, a human woman in a uniform unlike any Alliance design. Her dark skin contrasted with short silver hair, and her eyes held the wisdom of one who had seen beyond the veil of conventional existence. "Speaker Vorath," said Admiral Leona Walsh, her voice echoing in the empty chamber. "It has been some time." Vorath found his voice at last. "Have you come to witness our fall, to gloat over the ruins of what you helped build?" Walsh's expression showed neither triumph nor pity, only a profound detachment, as if she were observing events from a vast distance. "We've come to say farewell," she said simply. "Our work with the architects takes us beyond the boundaries of this galaxy. We will not return." "And the Alliance?" Vorath asked, gesturing to the crumbling chamber around them. "The civilization that stood for millennia will adapt or perish," Walsh replied. "As all things must. You chose permanence, Vorath. You chose the illusion of stability in a universe defined by change." She paused. "We were the change you feared. Now, we tend the cosmic garden while you sit amid decay." The living ships began to pulse with increasing intensity, their light overwhelming the chamber's dim illumination. Walsh stepped back, merging once more with her vessel. "Wait!" Vorath called, desperation overcoming pride. "Can nothing be salvaged? Can your architects offer nothing to those you leave behind?" Walsh's voice came one final time, already fading as the ships began to withdraw. "The architects do not intervene where they are not welcomed, but the seeds of change exist within all sentient life. Find your own path forward, Speaker, or join the cosmic archaeology of species who failed to evolve." The breach in reality closed as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving Vorath alone in the chamber once more. Above, the painted starfield continued to flake and fall. Below, cracks spread through the mirrored floor, fracturing his reflection into 1,000 fragments. In the distorted mirror, Vorath saw not just himself, but the fundamental error of the Council. The belief that order could be maintained without growth, that stability could exist without adaptation. They had expelled humanity for embodying change, only to discover too late that change was the only constant in the universe. He sank to his knees amid the broken reflections, a solitary figure in a chamber built to hold 900, watching as cracks of light spread like a dying star beneath him. Too late to fix it now.